It started subtly, as these things always do, a faint scratching from inside the walls of my old Victorian house. I'd just moved in, drawn by the charm of its age, the creaking floorboards, and the way the late afternoon sun slanted through the tall, wavy glass windows. Rats, I muttered to myself, making a mental note to call an exterminator. It was an old house, after all, bound to have a few unwanted tenants. I'd set a few traps, but they remained untouched, day after day. The scratching, however, grew bolder. It wasn't just at night anymore. It would start up in the middle of the day, a frantic, rhythmic scraping that seemed to follow me from room to room. I'd be in the kitchen making coffee, and there it was, coming from the wall behind the spice rack. I'd move to the living room to read, and the sound would migrate with me. Now, emanating from the wall behind the bookshelf. It was unnerving, but I kept telling myself it was just a particularly clever rat, or maybe a whole family of them, scurrying through the maze-like voids of the house. The first time it happened, I almost didn't register it. My girlfriend, Sarah, was out for the evening with her friends. The house was quiet, save for the incessant scratching. I was getting frustrated, pacing the hallway. "Just get out of my wall," I said aloud, more to myself than anything. The scratching stopped. Dead silence. A chill, completely unrelated to the autumn air, prickled my skin. I stood frozen, listening. Nothing. Maybe it was a coincidence. A few minutes passed, and the silence was almost more unnerving than the noise. "Hello!" I called out, feeling foolish, and then I heard it. A faint, dry whisper, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It sounded like it was right beside my ear, but also a million miles away. It was one word. My name. Alex. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Spoon harund, heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway was empty. The lights were on. There was no one there. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. Silence. Just the hum of the old refrigerator from the kitchen. I spent the rest of the night with every light in the house on, jumping at every creak and groan of the old structure. When Sarah came home, she found me huddled on the sofa, wide. I tried to explain what happened, but the words sounded insane even to my own ears. A voice in the wall. "Alex, you're just tired. This old house makes weird noises." She was right, of course. I was sleep-deprived and stressed from the move. It had to be my imagination, but it wasn't. The pattern became horrifyingly clear over the next few weeks. The scratching was constant when Sarah, or anyone else, was home. A normal, albeit annoying, past problem. But the moment I was alone, the scratching would cease, replaced by a tense, waiting silence. And if I dared to speak, it would answer. It started with just my name. A dry, rasping whisper. "Alex." Then it began to string together more words. I'd be washing dishes, alone in the house, and mutter, "I hate this." And from the wall, the whisper would come back. "Hate. This." Alex. It was mimicking me. Learning. The exterminator came and went. He found no signs of rats, no nests, no droppings. "Clean as a whistle," he'd said, shrugging. "Maybe a squirrel got in the attic, but the walls are solid." I didn't tell him what I was hearing. How could I? The voice grew stronger, more defined. It was no longer just a whisper. It started to sound familiar, like a distorted echo of my own voice, but older, drier, and filled with a chilling malevolence. "Eat, genau, thinks. No one else could know. One evening, alone again, I was thinking about my childhood dog, Rusty, who had passed away years ago. I didn't say a word, just had the image of him in my head. And from the wall beside my bed, the voice whispered, "Rusty is gone, Alex. All gone." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just hearing me anymore. It was in my head. I started to dread being alone. I'd beg Sarah not to go out, making up excuses. She started to get worried, suggesting I see a therapist. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. But then came the night that shattered any illusion of this being a product of my own psyche. I was in the basement, a place I usually avoided. It was damp and smelled of earth and decay. I was looking for a fuse box when the scratching started, not from the walls, but from a section of the old stone foundation that looked different. It was darker, and the mortar was crumbling. Driven by a morbid curiosity I couldn't explain, I grabbed a crowbar. "What are you?" I asked the wall, my voice shaking. The whisper came back, clearer than ever. "Let me out, Alex." My hands moved as if on their own. I jammed the crowbar into the crumbling mortar and pried. A section of the wall came loose, revealing a dark, cramped space behind it. And in that space, I saw it. It wasn't a rat. It was a skeleton, human, curled into a fetal position. Its bones were dry and brittle, and its jaw was hanging open, as if in a silent scream. But that wasn't the most horrifying part. Wrapped around the skeleton's bony fingers was a small, leather-bound journal. My hands trembled as I reached in and took it. The air grew frigid, and the voice screamed in my head, a cacophony of rage and despair. "Mine." I stumbled back, clutching the journal, and ran upstairs, slamming the basement door shut. I sat at the kitchen table, my heart pounding, and opened the book. The ink was faded, the handwriting that of a man from a century ago. It was a diary. The diary of a man named Alistair. He wrote about his brother, Jonathan. He described how he'd discovered Jonathan practicing dark arts, speaking to something that lived in the shadows of the house, something that promised him power. Alistair, fearing for his brother's soul and the safety of his family, confronted him. There was a struggle. And in his final, terrifying entry, Alistair wrote, "I have done a terrible thing. I have walled him in. He swore he would not die. He swore he would wait. He is scratching. God help me. He is scratching, and he is calling my name." My blood turned to ice. Alistair. Alex. The names were so similar. It wasn't mimicking me. It was confused. It had been waiting for over 100 years. Its consciousness trapped in the bones. Its hatred festering in the dark. It heard my name and thought its jailer had returned. The scratching I'd heard wasn't a rat. It was Jonathan, clawing at the stones for a century. The house isn't haunted by a ghost. It's a prison. And I had just cracked open the door. The scratching has stopped for good now, but I'm never truly alone. The whispering isn't in the walls anymore. It's everywhere. It follows me outside the house, a constant murmur at the edge of my hearing. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, my reflection smiles back. But the smile isn't mine. It's thin and cruel and ancient. It knows my name, and it's waiting to get out. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there.